chapter 4. All right. This morning we're going to be reading a story about the woman at the well. And you guys get a little special treat this morning because I'm going to tell on your pastor this morning. So, yeah, I had something happen this past week, and it opened my eyes to something that we all deal with, including me. And I want to get into that this morning, but we're going to start by reading John chapter 4. I'm going to read verses 3 through 29, so just hold on with me for just a little bit here. He left Judea and departed again to Galilee. But he needed to go through Samaria, so he came to a city of Samaria which is called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being wearied from his journey, sat thus by the well. It was about the 6th hour, noontime. A woman of Samaria came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. Then the woman of Samaria said to him, "How is it that you, being a Jew, ask a drink from me, a Samaritan woman? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans." Jesus answered and said to her, "If you knew the gift of God, and who it is who says to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where do you get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as well as his sons and his livestock?" And Jesus answered and said to her, "Whoever drinks of this water will thirst again. But whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him will never thirst. But the water that I shall give him will become in him a fountain of water springing up into everlasting life." Then the woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water that I may not thirst, nor come here to draw." Jesus said to her, "Go, call your husband and come here." And the woman answered and said, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You have well said, 'I have no husband.' For you have had 5 husbands, and the one whom you now have is not your husband, in that you spoke truly." The woman said to him, "Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, and you Jews say that in Jerusalem is the place where one ought to worship." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such worship to him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth." The woman said to him, "I know that Messiah is coming, who is called Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all things." And Jesus said to her, "I who speak to you am he." And at this point his disciples came, and they marveled that he talked with a woman. Yet no one said, "What do you seek?" or "Why are you talking with her?" The woman then left her water pot, went her way to the city, and said to the men, "Come, there is a man who told me all things that I never did. Could this be the Christ?" When we look at this story right here of the Samaritan woman, one thing that we notice when she's talking to Jesus here is right here in verse 17. The woman answered and said, "I have no husband." Jesus said, "That's right, you have no husband, for you've had 5 husbands, and now the guy you're staying with, you're shacking up with him." This woman's got a little bit of a personality. I want to back up just a little bit, let you know a little bit about Samaria here. The Samaritan people were regarded by Jewish people pretty much to be scum. Okay, these were like poor white trailer trash people. Okay, these were a lot of people. The Samaritans interbred with the Assyrians, and they just had a hodgepodge of people that were not respected and not liked. They had pulled away from most of the teachings of God. They did believe in the first 5 books of the Old Testament. They lived somewhat by the law, but they also erected their own gods and idols, and they lived by those, and they worshiped them. So they didn't follow the complete book of the Bible when living their lives. So they were regarded as just being left alone. The part where Jesus went through to see her, most Jews would never have gone through Samaria to get where they were going. They would have gone around the long way because they did not want to go through that area because of the people there. They had nothing to say to these people. They were better than these people, okay? So Jesus goes through there because he knew he had to meet this woman. But he's talking to her, and apparently this woman has a little bit of a problem. She had been through 5 husbands already, and she's living with a guy. So undoubtedly, this woman has already gained a bit of a reputation as being a loose woman. And back in these days right here, whenever they had issues or whatever was going on, the women could not divorce their husbands like you can today. Back in these days, even Samaria, the husband had to divorce the woman. So apparently there's something going on that caused 5 guys to say, out. Okay? Now, maybe she was a loose cannon. Maybe she just liked to play around a little bit. Maybe she didn't like what she had at home. There's no telling. But by the story, we can guess. And now that she's living with somebody, she's probably a little loosey-goosey. Okay? Right? I mean, let's just call for what we're seeing here, right? Well, now let me back up and tell on the preacher for a minute. This past week, I got a text message from somebody that wanted me to come by and take a look at his house. And so I called him and I set up an appointment to come by the house. And when I first picked up the phone and I gave him a call, the gentleman had one of those, how do I say, soft-spoken voices. He said, I'd love you to come over and take a look at my house. And I said, yes, sir. So we set up a time. And I went over there, and knocked on his door, and I was looking on his front door. He had a little thing that says, you know, anybody that's coming into the house, workers or family or friends, whatever, no smoking in the house, and please take off your shoes. So I started untying my shoes. I was getting ready to come in the house. He comes to the door, and he's like, hi, Mr. Rockel. Sir, how you doing? And so we go in the house, and my mind's going already. I'm thinking, woohoo! This is going to be interesting. So I go in, and I'm walking around, and he's showing me his house, and he wants me to paint this room over here, and he'd like me to paint this room over here, and mention me the trim all nice, and it's got these brush marks on it. And he's really worried about that. He doesn't want to see those brush marks anymore. They bother him, you know. And so we're going through the house, and I'm thinking, oh. And then I see all this stuff on his walls. He's got pictures of his family, and he's got the God loves you over here, and then all I can do all things through Christ over here, and I'm going, oh, boy, this is mixed up. This is mixed up. Okay, because we all know what that is. You know, I mean, we're thinking, yeah, okay, so he's, you know, and then he's worshiping, and it just doesn't jive. I mean, so I'm like, Lord, this does not feel right. So we're going through the house, and we go upstairs, and he shows me one room, a guest room, and there's another room where he's got a couple of beds in there, and then we go and he shows me the master bedroom, and he starts talking about he's got this is his townhouse, and he's got another house where his ex-wife stays. And I'm thinking, okay, all right, so maybe you divorced for a reason. And he said, sometimes my kids come and stay. I said, okay, well, that's cool. And my mind's going, this is just all wrong. And then he proceeds to tell me that he's a teacher. I said, oh, okay, so where do you teach? And he told me the school they taught at. I said, okay, I know where that's at. And I said, well, what do you teach? He said, I teach culinary arts. I said, okay. So that might explain a little bit more about things. And then we went downstairs, and he shows me the garage, and he wants to work on the garage too. And he says, yeah. He says, I had the students come over from the school. Some of them came over and painted the garage, and part of me went, oh, that's wrong. That's wrong. You had students over here? Okay. Now I've really got a worry on my mind. So then we go back in the house, and we're talking some more, and then he's talking about, yeah, about him and his wife got a divorce, and then he says, yeah, you know, my wife and I, we just couldn't make it work. He said, my kids keep saying, Daddy, you quit dating so-and-so, or, you know, because I'm trying to date. And he says, well, you know, I tell my kids, well, you tell your mama to quit dating, but they won't do it. And then it hit me. The whole time that I thought that this man was one way because he had a soft voice. He was steady trying to get back with his wife. I made a judgment in my mind the moment I picked up the phone and I called him and he said, hello, Mr. Rockel. Because he had a soft voice, I perceived, as most of us do, most of us perceive that a guy talks like that, he's got a little bit of a problem. And he doesn't like ladies. Especially if he's in the culinary arts. And he keeps an immaculate house. But see, I made a mistake that day. The whole time I'm talking to this man, I'm having issues in my mind. I'm thinking that this guy is gay. I'm thinking, no wonder you're divorced, you're gay. No wonder you're acting like you do and you're where you are. No wonder that bothered me that the students were over here painting your garage and you're gay. And by the end of the conversation, I was begging God to forgive me for the things that I thought in my head because I was dead wrong. See, we look at this woman in the story right here, and she had 5 husbands. And she's living with a guy when Jesus talks to her. So we perceive that she's a little loosey-goosey. What we don't understand is, in this period of time, women were thought of as objects. They had no rights. They had no social standing. They were like the low of the low. They were not allowed to voice their opinion. They were just to do, period, what their husbands demanded of them. So, what if we looked at this woman right here and flipped it over just a little bit? What if maybe, just maybe because of their culture, and maybe just maybe because of the way things were, that maybe her husbands were abusive? What if she went one after another just to find out that every time he came home from work or the fields or whatever it was, and all he did was beat on her? What if every day they degraded her so much that she did whatever she could to get away and caused the man to want to divorce her? And she went through husband after husband after husband because she just didn't like being with them. And maybe it came to this last person, this 6th man, that she had enough of being in a relationship where she's being mistreated and being abused and being yelled at, being beaten, maybe, just maybe. And so instead of marrying the guy, she decides to go ahead and live with the guy. That way, if she needs to, she can break ties. We have a whole lot of that going on today, don't we? We have people that have gone into marriages, and then they come out of marriages all busted up. Physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, whatever the case may be. And so if they go to get into another relationship, they're not going to completely commit to it. They want to have that quick out if it's available to them. And maybe that's what happens here. But see, we tend to go out, as the pastor did this past week, and perceive something that wasn't, based on what everybody else thinks. And instead of going into this man's house to give him an estimate on doing a job, and talking with him and spending time with him and just looking at him through Christ's eyes, I looked at him through the world's eyes. I let the devil get into my head and cause me to speculate and think and judge this man when I had absolutely no right to do so. I knew absolutely nothing about this man. But because he opened his mouth and said 3 or 4 words that came out different, I judged him. How many of us do that to other people? How many of you look around and you're out with other people and you judge them because of how they look? How many times do you judge somebody because of how they act? Just because they don't do it the way you do it. Just because they don't act the way you act. Just because they're not a Christian like you are. You feel you have the right to judge them. And that's what we do to this woman right here. But you know what Jesus did? He went out of his way to go through an area that Jews didn't go. And when he met with this woman, there's 3 laws that he broke, Jewish laws that he broke. He talked to a Samaritan. He talked to a Samaritan woman, or a woman. And then he was going to take a drink from her cup, which would have made him unclean. See, too many of us, I think, in our lives, we're worried about getting unclean. We're worried about taking a moment in time in our lives and just kind of stooping down to somebody else's level, to show them a little bit of love that Christ has. Because I'm going to tell you something. Christ stooped way down for me. Because at one time in my life, I was trailer trash. I was a dirtbag. I was scum. But he loved me enough to step out of his way and come and meet me. Something we need to look at, and we need to make sure that we do. We need to make sure that we can see these people, and like I said, I asked God to forgive me because I was wrong. And that's something we all need to work at, because here in the South, and I know it's been really hard in the South, we deal with a lot of racial prejudice here. A lot of it. And I'll be quite honest in saying that I have dealt with it myself, in the fact that when I came to the South, I was not prejudiced. But when you're here long enough, it's almost hard not to be prejudiced. Because when you have people that talk about how another group is being prejudiced against them, but they don't take the steps to be unprejudiced themselves, it just goes back and forth, and it never stops, because nobody really wants it to stop. Even those that are being persecuted really don't want it to stop, because they want to have a scapegoat as to why things ain't going their way. But we get that way. We like to bow up on other people when we don't get it our way. And we like to cry the race card or the discrimination card or whatever it is. And we need to get past that. We truly need to get past that in all aspects and levels of the people that we deal with. Because we deal with a different gamut of people in our lives, in our everyday life. We deal with people that have affluence, and we deal with people that have nothing. And we need to learn how to react and interact with all these people. Because that's what Jesus did. He didn't hold judgment on anybody. All he had was love for everybody. And that's what we got to do. We got to have love. It doesn't matter what anybody did. It doesn't matter what anybody's lifestyle was. We've got to take on this living water that the Lord has and then draw from it every day. I mean, when we're dealing with people that have issues, we've got to be willing to console them. It doesn't matter what may have caused their issue. That's not my concern. How many of us have dealt with people or looked at people and they dug themselves into a well so deep and then they turn around and you know they dug that well. You watch them dig the well. You're sitting back there going, yeah, you're fixing to walk right into it. Poof, and there they go. They fall right into that well they dug. And what do? We just stand there and snicker and say, oh. Instead of saying, hey, let me help you out. Hope you learned something from it, but I'm going to help you out. See, we like to stand there and snicker at people. It doesn't matter how they got there because you were there once. For some of us, 2 or 3 or 4 times we were in the well. So sometimes we don't learn our lesson, so we keep on digging. If this well don't work, well, we'll just move over about 10 more feet and dig another one. Or we'll just go on to the next town and dig another well. Fall right on in. And when you're at the bottom of the well, you sure don't need nobody snickering at you, do you? You'd rather somebody lowered down a rope and pulled you up. And that's what Jesus was doing. He knew what was going on in her life. He didn't care how she got there. All he cared about was showing her living waters. Showing her that you can get out of this. Showing her that there is a better life. And that's what we're supposed to do. If we've got Jesus Christ in us, it's our responsibility, if not to one another here, but to other people also, to show them that there is a way out of it. You don't have to live in that misery. You don't have to live in that chaos. Life is not about God dumping on your head every day. That's not the God I serve. God is a loving God. Life may not always seem fair, but God's fair. And God's a loving God, and He cares about us. But sometimes people need not just God, but they need somebody else to show up at the well and to give them some love. Because when this woman went to the well, there should have been nobody at the well because it was the hottest time of the day, and nobody else goes to the well at that time of the day. She wanted to be alone, probably. Or she was being shunned or outcast by the people in her community. We got a lot of outcast people in our communities. We got a lot of lonely people that hide behind a mask. And some of us know some of these people. And we need to understand that when we know these people, we need to be able to swallow our own pride and go up to them and just give them a little love. You may not even have to worry about trying to solve their problem for them. They might just need a hug. Or a handshake. Or just to let them know you're thinking about it. Because that's what they need sometimes. Just as we need that sometimes. We've had those days where we don't need nobody to try to tell us how to figure it out. You ever been there? Where you already know what you did. Huh? You already know how to get out of it. You can't quite get there yet. All you need was somebody just to come by so you can cry on their shoulder and hug your neck and then move on. It's going to be okay. So if we've been in that position before, how many people do we know that's in that position? That all they need is just a good hug. A little bit of love, knowing that they have a God that loves them because they sent you to give them a hug. Right? All right. So I want us to focus on that this week. Let's have a song. We're going to have a little early one tonight. You guys got off lucky. But I do want you to understand something. When it comes to everyday life, even your pastor struggles and makes his mistakes. But be willing to know it when you do it, okay? It's always growing, it's always learning. We all make mistakes, and it's okay. as long as we move forward. What's the number?
341.
341, union hymnals, please.